So as you can see from where we started, it looked really bad. Now, it's starting to come together. Trick is you just got to keep at it. Hey everyone, Aaron Lovejoy here for Miniature Monthly, and in today's episode we're going to be exploring how to create volumes with saturated color, and we will be doing this on none other than the Incredible Hulk from Atomic Mass Studios' Marvel Crisis Protocol. To do this, I'm going to show you a few things on the Rock Troll from Reaper Miniatures. Oftentimes I use Reaper Bones and Bones Black to practice theories and techniques on. They're relatively inexpensive and great models to practice on. So here we have our troll. Again, we have some nice contrast, some nice volume with the Zenithal Prime. But once we've got our base coat on, you can see that we've lost most of it. In fact, the color is really flattened out. So in the past, I would have started by mixing in some, maybe this pale olive color, something much lighter. So I've added in a little bit of that pale olive and some white. And just gonna kind of do a rough sketch here, see how our colors look. Now you notice not a whole lot's happening. And we're keeping our colors. Our volumes aren't being too volumized. They're staying fairly flat. Volumized? That's it, folks. You heard it here first. A brand new word brought to you by Aaron Lovejoy. Write that down. And not very exciting. So if I keep going, you can see I do get a little bit of volume working with these colors, but it's very slow and go. So what happens if I start mixing in a little bit more vibrant color? So back to our color theory of saturation creates volume. Right away starts doing a little bit of work for us. You don't even put that much. I'm just going to put it a couple places here so you can see it in action. That looks pretty cool. Now what if you wanted a little even more saturated? Let's add a little bit of that necrotite green in there. And I'm just going to kind of give you a couple little examples of how that works. So those colors are starting to show up much better, much quicker. So what happens when we have a much darker color, like maybe one of our shadow colors? So I mix that magenta in with my green, maybe a little bit of black, pump it down a little bit more. And I'm going to put that right here in my shadows. Now, one of two things is starting to happen here. We've desaturated our color using the complementary color, so magenta, and also a little bit of black. And so that's darkened up this area right down here. I put some right in here, and I put some over here. So that's already starting to do a little bit of work. We're making some uninteresting areas where our eyes are not drawn to with desaturated color. Also, that desaturated color is starting to create some more shadows. Kind of what our black did in our black and white sketch. But what happens if you want to highlight some areas right in here? So if we want to highlight some areas in our shadows, we can easily just take some of this super saturated, very yellowish green, mix that right in with our shadow color. Now notice that I used a very saturated color to highlight my very desaturated shadow, and not the olive color, which was much lighter on my palette. The reason for this is my saturated color will do much more work and show up better than a desaturated color in the highlight. Bam! Did you see that? We made dark highlights by adding a very saturated color to the mix. So we kind of did the same. See how that shows up right there? Kind of the same theory is up in here, except with a much darker color, more desaturated color. So if we go back up in here into our highlights, now, most colors can have a certain amount of white added to them before they start drastically becoming, having less chroma and becoming desaturated. In fact, sometimes adding a little bit of white will almost appear to have the effect of adding more chroma to the color. You're just going to have to play around with it a little bit to find out what works and what doesn't. Much faster volume. You let that color do the work for you. Works pretty good. So we can always add just a little bit of white to it. Desaturates the color just a little bit, but it also gives us a little bit lighter tone. Sometimes a little bit higher chroma. Chroma is basically the brightness of that color. I know, it's a rock troll and not a human. And maybe rock trolls have very matte, dull skin. But in my world, in my fantasy world, rock trolls have humanish, satiny skin. So there. Not to mention, it just looks nice. And, you know, there's the roller cool, right? Bam! The other thing that you want to do is you want to do multiple layers of the same exact color. So just keep insisting on that color. They don't always have to be exactly perfect either. A little bit of dotting and stippling and stuff is perfectly fine. In fact, probably looks a little bit better. So as you add more white though, you definitely want to keep that stuff in smaller and smaller areas. So maybe we make an effect that the skin is a little bit semi-gloss. Skin typically is a little bit glossy, so we can put a little bit of shine on it. So you may have to play around with your mixture on this highlight for a little bit. Too much magenta and your highlight's going to start looking a little bit purple. And if you want, we can do our contrasting highlight. Mix that into our green, get a gray. So the $1,000,000 question is, how thick should your blending glaze be? And what I usually tell people is keep adding tiny amounts of water to the mix until when you apply the paint, it appears a little bit cloudy over the other two colors. So you're going to put it in between your whichever two colors you're blending, say your highlight and your midtone, and you're going to put that blending mix right over that, so it's a mixture between those two colors, and you're going to put enough water in it that when you apply it, it will look sort of cloudy. You'll kind of be able to see the other colors beneath, but not really. So not too opaque and not too see-through. Again, that's another color that goes right up there inside that whitish area. And that will give us a nice contrast between colors. So I just did this real quick. It's not very blended or anything, but you see how I can build volumes with that. If I want to come back in, like maybe I went a little bit too far, make a quick glaze with my green, my necrotite green, and bring back in, sort of smooth in those transitions. I smoothen those transitions with my most vibrant color. That's the one that's going to start blending. Everything will be blended with my vibrant color, my brightest color. You just get super bright colors like that. So that's a great way to work up your highlights and saturation. Get a model that really, really pops on the table. You can see this from across the room. And now, let's see what it looks like on the Hulk. So that's how you use saturated color to build volumes quickly. And remember, saturated colors show up great from a distance or even in low light situations. So if you want your models to pop, it's all about the saturated color, even if they're a desaturated color scheme. So try out using some saturated color to help boost your highlights, to help boost your midtones, to help boost your volume. Let me know what you think. And if you have any questions, ask them in the comments section or on our Discord server. That's a great place to ask. Basically, the tutorial is over now. So if you got what you needed, great, you're all done. But I know that a lot of you want to see me paint the Hulk. In fact, I want to see me paint the Hulk, and I have a ton of great footage. You'll also get to see my thought process. So take a quick bathroom break, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Let's take a look at the color palette I used. Now remember, I don't always use every color that I put on the palette. I put them there as, just in case. Sometimes I use them, sometimes I don't. But it's a pretty good educated guess as to the colors I will use. Now let's do this. All right, so for the Hulk skin, I want to go obviously green, but I'm going to go for a more sort of tealish green base coat. So I'm going to be going with Cabalite green from Citadel. It's in this range right over here. And if you can see down here, our complementary colors are either red or like an orangish red, somewhere in that range. To highlight them, I want to go more towards the warm. So, because I want his skin really, really vibrant. And if we go more towards the yellow, I'm going to get that. So I'm going to go with Necrotite green from Privateer Press. Might highlight it with some yellow to get a little bit more pop, maybe in the highest highlight areas. Adding in a little bit of the Schmincke Titanium White wherever we need it. Now for the shadows, well, let's talk about the midtones. Midtones are obviously the Cabalite green, but we want to have a kicker color. We want something on the opposite side of the color wheel that we can kind of sprinkle in and make our color more interesting. So I'm going to go with this Scrag Brown from Citadel, as well as for a little bit darker shade, the Mournfang Brown from Citadel as well. For shadows, we're looking at Coal Black from P3 because it's a nice tealy shadow. It's basically made with teal and black. Thamar Black. So if we need to desaturate further, we've got that. I'm also going to have on hand a little bit of our clear magenta and a little bit of red to mix in with that so we get that reddish magenta. I found another color from Nocturna here. This is called Lipstick, and it's sort of a reddish magenta too, so I put it on my palette just to see what happens. Sometimes you gotta search for those colors, for those tones, to finally get the proper highlight color for what you're doing. So that being said, let's get rolling on this. So I'm not sure exactly how this is going to work out. I've chosen my colors. I've got a whole bunch of colors here on my palette, and let's just see what happens. So I'm going to follow my Zenithal Prime kind of as a color guide. I'm going to keep by putting my shadows where there's kind of darker shadow areas. This in turn, the black that's underneath there will kind of desaturate my colors anyways. So that'll help keep those shadows in there. And then my more vibrant colors are going to be up here in the highlight areas. You can also see where things start getting darker because my pocket of light is over here. So this side of the chest is a little bit darker than this side. So maybe I'm going to be using colors that have more of my base tone in it rather than the colors that have more of my highlight in it. So we'll see how that goes as well. The other thing that I'm going to be doing today is kind of a different style of painting. It's like a pseudo dry brush. It's not really a dry brush. It's not really wet blending. It's kind of a combination of everything. I'll also be mashing my paint quite a bit. I've got some cool brushes. This is the Citadel, I guess it's a dry brush, but anyways, it's got a nice stiff tip on it that I can kind of smear my paint around with. I've also got some makeup brushes. This is from Morphe, and you can get those online. Amazon has them, pretty good deals there. And I'll also be using my super duper hobby brush number 8 and a very nice Raphael 8404. So that being said, oh, maybe we'll even use one of these Ruboloft brushes. So I'm going to start off by mixing up a little bit of my colors here. I want to have sort of a highlight color already in the works, and then maybe a little bit more like that. I'm going to have a color over here that has a little bit of our brown in it, or our orange, kind of a desaturated version of our color. And then I think these other colors I can just kind of work in when I need to. Oh, one color that I didn't mention back when I was telling about colors is this one. It's a Sunny Skin Tone from Vallejo. It's this color right here on my palette, and it is an orangey yellowish red, super saturated color, great for skin tones, not by itself, but more so for highlights and stuff. I might be working this in a little bit with my highlights, so we'll see what happens there. Again, a lot of this is finding the tones of color that we need and then manipulating them. So that being said, let's get started. Maybe I'll start with the dry brush later. So we'll start with some of these colors, a little bit of my blue with a little bit of black in it. Down in my shadows, and we'll just start moving those colors in here. So moving this down here. All right, so I'm gonna just start putting this in, and it's almost like that, just kind of mushing it in there. There's going to be lots of streaks, lots of smearing, all that good stuff, but at the end of the day, I think we'll have some decent texture. So I want to try to keep more of this really vibrant version of my color on this side of the body. Holy cow! Are any of you having a heart attack right now? I am a little bit, just a little bit, but stick with me because it will get better. Progressively getting a little bit darker. This is all fairly saturated color over here, but I'm using colors that are darker in chroma, like physically darker. So the bluer end of the color is going down here. The warmer, more yellow end of the color is going up in the top. And maybe we do a little bit. Still warm up here in the shadow side, but a hair cooler. Anywhere that I see sort of darker tones, I'm grabbing from my darker color. And we'll just get a real quick sort of sketch going. I know what you're thinking. This looks really, really bad. Don't worry, pay attention, and it will all come together in the end. So maybe we'll go a little bit darker in our values, or in our chroma. So picking a little bit of that bluer green for the hand. I might change my mind on that later and make it brighter just because his hand's out in front of him. But I kind of want you not to notice, I want you to notice the hand, but I don't want you to notice the hand. I want you to notice the face. The hand there. So if you notice, as I worked my way around the face, I went cooler on the left side of the face, warmer in the middle, and then on the right side next to the ear, I went cooler again. This is helping me build my volumes just by going from cool to warm shades on the face. I'm trying to do brush strokes in all different angles and stuff to kind of create like a sort of a haphazard, almost a texture. The nice thing about this style of painting is, at least at first, you don't have to think about the paint job too much. Just think about where your colors are and how bright or how dark they are, how saturated or how desaturated they are. All those things that we don't normally think about when we're painting. Usually you're so preoccupied with if it looks good or not, if your blends are, super smooth or whatever. So this kind of gives you that option to just not care nearly as much. We can try by adding a little bit more darkness in certain areas. You can see like in here, it's almost like dry brushing. Like I'm taking my lighter color and kind of just running it over my edges. And I know some of you out there are total control freaks, and I am too, to an extent. So probably seeing me paint like this is like, I need to be more precise. But right now, you don't need to be precise. You need to be more precise with your colors. Again, these lighter areas, using my lighter version of the color. Darker areas, we use the base tone and the shadow, depending on where it is on the model. So just kind of painting it in. We say lighter area right there. Maybe even lighter because it's the top of the foot. Like that. Get a lot of people, some people on our Discord asking about what it means for the zenithal prime to be like a roadmap, and this is exactly what it means. I'm just grabbing the areas that are lighter or darker. So like his heel right here is just a little bit darker, so I'm going to use my base color, my base tone color, and then right above it, it gets lighter again, and I just place in my lighter color right there. Doesn't matter if it blends in perfectly or anything. Basically just want to get our colors blocked in. So once again, I'm using chroma levels to brighten and shade the model at this point. I know that the bluish tones will appear darker than the warm tones. And for the really dark areas, I'm totally crushing that color and desaturating it even further with darker blues and even a little bit of black. All right. All right, for this part, I'm going to grab one of my old number 8 brushes that's been cut off on the tip, and it's a little bit harder. And basically, this brush is going to be my brush for starting to put on different colors. What the heck is going on? Don't worry, we're building texture without even knowing it. Again, I'm not going to worry too much about whether it's covering or not covering or what it's doing. I'm just trying to get colors going. I'll add a little bit of my yellow to that. this will do, it kind of gives a little bit of a dry brushed look, but also it starts putting tiny little streaks, and it also keeps our paint very, very flat. So it does several things. Yeah, sometimes it feels like nothing's happening, but stay at it, be patient, and you will see results. Also, be sure to do several layers of the same color. This is called insisting on color. From all my different colors here. I'll also even start putting in some of these browns. I kind of like that. It's starting to push this hue to like a browner color or an orangier color. Now, why did I choose this side to put my orangish brown color on? Well, the first reason is I want our darkest colors, which are going to be on the left side of the model, to be a more bluish tone. This will appear further away, it'll appear darker, all that good stuff. Since this is the lighter side of the model, I can put the orangey brown tones. The second thing is, when I'm doing kicker colors like this, I want to put them in areas that I want to create more interest in. And since this is the light side of the model, and I want you to be more interested in this side of the model, bam, that's why I put it there. Get rid of, I want to keep the texture, but I want to get rid of the streaks of my brush strokes before. So we're just going to start going back and forth over everything. I'm pushing fairly hard on my brush as well. Putting some of this back down into those areas where we put the orange. So I'm kind of paying attention and watching when little blobs of paint go down. And then if they go down on the model, then I kind of mush them around so that they appear smooth. Paying attention to where my light source was, which is this direction right here. So it's going to hit on this side and tops of these muscles right there. A little bit up there. I do a lot of wiping paint off with my fingers, and that's perfectly okay. Unless, of course, you have super greasy fingers, which would be bad, or really acidic skin. I actually have a friend who he can strip a model just by using the acid on his skin. So if you have that, probably not a good idea to touch your miniatures, but otherwise, it's okay to wipe stuff off. You see with this brush, I'm hitting it a little bit lighter. Bringing in some of those brown tones over here, wipe them off. A little bit in between the chest right there. Being super, super light with my brush right now. Just hoping that little bitty lines and stuff I wasn't really planning on to come off my brush comes off my brush. And sometimes as my brush runs out of paint, I'll go hit other areas where I don't want a whole lot of change to happen, but a little bit is good. I think really the key to this style of painting or technique or whatever you want to call it is to jump between your colors quite a bit. So I'm going between this midtone, that highlight, our other midtone, shadow colors, all that stuff. Just kind of back and forth, covering things up, re-bringing out highlights, re-bringing out shadows. So what ends up happening is you'll start getting a color in there, it looks a little bit bad, the next color goes over it, fixes it a little bit, maybe you mess something else up, and you just kind of keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Maybe even we'll mix up, got sort of this weird teal color going. So maybe we'll do, we're at warm highlights. Maybe we'll do a little bit cool. We'll jump back and forth between warm and cool, because that will give us some contrast in there that you can see. And as I'm running out of paint, I can come over here to the areas that I don't want as bright. Put a little bit right there. Maybe these brown tones will be a little bit more prevalent down by his feet. What if we just speckle them on and wipe them off with another brush? Kind of tones it down a little bit. A good brush. I'm going to do a few glazes here just to kind of bring up some colors and see what it looks like. Kind of going back and forth between glazing and our dry brush deal. One nice thing with this guy is he's all green. Oh, except for his shorts and his hair. But hopefully we've made his greenness interesting enough. The cool thing is, because we've worked in a lot of texture with our base coats, now we can texture with our highlights. It looks a little bit more natural because everything's super textury. Probably the last tone I do will have some of that blue texture again, so I can put some scratches on the skin and things show up really well. Now I'll just keep adding my highlights. I'm going to hit them over and over again, so eventually they become very opaque or opaque-ish. I'm going to try to... He has individual abs and stuff here, but if you kind of connect them in spots, it looks better. The lower we go, we'll drop some of our other mid-tone colors. Maybe even we'll do This is a little trick I learned last year when Sergio Calvo did his US tour. Man, those Spanish painters really do know their stuff when it comes to painting just about anything. You know, these super dark areas we'll highlight with a little bit more vibrant color, because it will show up in those deep cracks and crevices. At least for now. We can always change it. I'm painting with fairly thick paint right now. I mean, none of my paint's really thinned out, but I usually don't thin out my paints anyways in my base coats, so maybe we'll do a little bit of these highlights, pick up some scratches and scuffs on his. I don't know if the Incredible Hulk had scratches and scuffs, but you know what, I'm putting it in there. Yes, teeny tiny nipples too. Little did you know you'd be getting a teeny tiny nipple tutorial. So as you can see from where we started, it looked really bad. Now, it's starting to come together. Trick is you just got to keep at it. One of the other things I'm doing is I'm staying back from the model. Let's see here. Now I'm viewing the model from right there, about a foot away, foot and a half away. So I can see more of the shadows and stuff, where they look cool and where they don't. I think actually I want to have like more of a purpley shadow up in here, so. And maybe later on I will put in some extra shadows with the airbrush or something. Maybe just by hand, who knows. I'm using colors that we already had on the palette, black and brown, Oranfang brown. I'm gonna kind of block in the hair here. So I'm going to a little bit browner on top. This is my base coat. Alright, once I get the hair blocked in, I can start applying highlights and playing with my colors a little bit, which should be pretty fun. You know what? Let's mix in some of this sunny skin tone. can see over here, things are starting to smooth out quite a bit. Over here, where I haven't really touched it since our dry brushing, and it could probably use a little bit more dry brushing, and it's still pretty coarse. But over here, the paint's starting to look very, very smooth. Those will be his nipple placeholders for now. You can see it really well on this side, or better. Go a little bit lighter value on that side so you can see it. Maybe on both sides. All right. His Hulk nipples are rocking. I'm going over sections just long enough for them to start changing from being kind of brushstrokey to a little bit more smoothed out. And I leave, go into another section. I come back and I continue refining. I think I could probably bring up the values right there. So part of that will be everything in this section's got to be brighter. And same with this section. I kind of want that triangle right around his face. But let me finish some more areas off on the model, and then we will revisit this because I don't want to make too many decisions before I can see the whole model or all of the highlights on the model. Sometimes you start going back and forth between things, and it's a bad idea. So maybe this should be the brightest because it's right next to the face. If I start making those two things brighter, maybe we could lose the face. So let's see what we can do here. And right now I'm just sort of bringing back some bluish tones to certain areas. Also notice that I'm constantly adding more saturation and then desaturating the color. I'm trying to find that perfect tone. Notice that when I'm mixing the colors, I'm going back and forth between more saturation and less saturation. I'm really trying to find that perfect tone that shows up well in the miniature and does exactly what I want it to do. So again, I try to place my highlights in the most obvious places. Upturned sides of the skin would be the first most obvious place. And then once we get all those placed, we can start putting things in other spots. now that we've kind of got some base coats on, I'm going to put a base coat on his shorts here, and I'm going to use this lipstick color just because I think that will be a little bit funny. It's like a magenta, so the Hulk has like sort of magenta-ish pants or purple, so I think that lipstick works. Just make him angrier, maybe. Or make him happier. One of the two. Alright, now we're going to add some shadows back in with our airbrush, doing some glazing. And let's see if we can't bump up the contrast on these muscles. So I'm whoa. I'm going to add about 7 drops of this Scale 75 acrylic thinner. Maybe 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. And I'm going to mix up on my palette some dark purpley bluish color with that lipstick and the coal black. Maybe a little bit more blue, a little bit more of that coal black. See that? It's very, very light for how dark it is. And now we're just going to start spraying from really, really low angles. I'm going to spray a little bit in on his pants here. You can see that this glaze is not changing the color super drastically. In fact, I want to build the shadows a little bit at a time. Basically, I'll shade the entire model before putting multiple coats on. This gives me a clearer picture of what the miniature will look like as a whole. It also gives me the chance to make better decisions on whether or not to go darker in certain areas. And it lets the paint dry, so there's that too. Alright, so now I'm just applying some more highlight areas or highlight colors in my highlight areas. So I'm going to be using much more of the really vibrant saturated greens to do a lot of work for me. As you can see here, I am using the Necrotite green mixed with some Sunny Skin Tone, and very quickly I've realized that the Sunny Skin Tone is the rock star of this. I think it's just that it's got so much yellow in it and a little bit of that red. It just does a lot of work for me as far as just showing up on the model. So working in some more of those textures is really key to getting those highlights built up. And I'll just keep doing this over and over and over again. See right here, a shaky hand is actually good. Good news, baby. Good news. Just trying to hit all the areas, all these little highlights, the little veins, everything that I think could possibly have a little bit brighter highlight, and just going over and over and over again, trying to build up that color. And I really do find that having sort of some hard edges, I know this is all very soft and organic, but having a few hard edges, lines where your eyes can, I don't know, you need those hard edges to be able to see the different volumes better. So if I can bring up some of those colors, some of those highlights, it would just be easier to see in the long run. So for areas deep in these cracks and crevices where it's really, really dark, notice I'm mixing up, I'm grabbing my darker color, but mixing a little bit more vibrant color or saturated color into it. And we'll just kind of place it way back in here. Bit of that color. There's some details over here. The Hulk just has so many massive muscles that you really got to look all over the place for it. And then also, you know, maybe even create some things that aren't there. scrapes and scratches with that color. Also kind of glaze it in over here, just to soften out some of our brush strokes. Cool thing, once you start thinning out your paint, when it dries, it takes up some of the characteristics of the paint under it. So even though we're covering up some of these areas or going further out, it still retains that kind of dark look or the shifting color. So we want all these things we want to work for us. Now, the one thing we might run into a problem here is as I put those glazes on, it may start desaturating the area again. So maybe we grab a little bit of our really vibrant green, that straight up necrotite green, and we'll start glazing it in as well, especially at the outside edges of our blend here. So I just want to start bringing back in that saturation, and the saturated color will work for us. Will work wonders. It will be the most wonderful working of all works. Or it will just help build our volumes up. So anything we start losing, we can regain. That's the biggest thing with painting. I mean, sometimes you start with a pretty good contrast, and then along the way, you just start losing it. We start putting so many colors over each other, and it's really frustrating. But if you remember some simple tips, like saturating your color, will bring back some of that body, some of the volume, or a lot of the volume. And we can do it in subtle ways by thinning our paints down. Maybe I'll bring some of that more tealy, bluish color in. Just sort of subtly changing our hues all over the place. So there's some areas that I really am starting to dig, and I don't know exactly how it's going to turn out in the end. But this area over here with the teal, I really, really like that. And the green's turning to teal. So maybe I'll start pushing all these shadows over here towards the teal, more of a vibrant teal. Just like that. Quite that light. So constantly searching for the correct kind of tone, and the more you do this, the better you get at it, I swear. Placing the color in there. Taking a second to look at it. See if we're in the right track or not. So slowly we'll start creeping a little bit of highlight color across this chest. Up on this. I still want to get sort of that movie feel, so I still want a pocket right there of light, and then the light sort of diminishes as it goes across. So that being said, I don't want quite as much light over here. Now, if we accidentally put too much light over here, that's all right. We can always knock it back down with some shadow glazes and stuff. But for now, just trying to get everything. And when you're looking at this, you want it to be like this is straight on. Usually people look at it from about that angle. So I'm going to look at it from about that angle too. That's the angle. Right there is about the angle that most people will view the model. And I'm just trying to be patient and just keep re-hitting the same spots with pretty much the same exact color. Same exact light tones. I switch to midtones, I hit the same exact midtones over and over again. Even when I come in close to see the details or to paint the details, I then immediately move back from a distance and see if it looks okay. And I see like areas like this, I can just start all that shadow just starts disappearing. Maybe I leave pockets of it. I'm just kind of putting in some of these scratches now. Kind of put them in at all different times. So I'm not really sure what to do with this area right here of the arm. Kind of gone back and forth. And whether it should be dark or light or combination of both. I think it should be a combination of both because it doesn't seem right dark and it doesn't seem right light. So maybe we'll go like an in-betweener color. I'm just taking my Necrotite green. It's kind of a highlight color, but I'm kind of putting some stipples in there. I'll bring some back over here. Notice how random my stippling is here. Less in the shadows, more in the highlights, but then sometimes I don't put very much in the highlights at all. Sometimes I just put it in the midtones. I don't know. It's just random, and that's what makes it work. At the end of the day, though, I will have more of these lighter tones in the highlight areas than anywhere else, because obviously we need a highlight, baby. Which is a good thing. So I'm going to start bringing back in some of this Necrotite right here. So in the sculpt, it feels like it moves out a little bit right there. Maybe it doesn't, but I kind of like the way that looks. So I'm going to put in this Necrotite right there. So we're creating volume right there. So if you notice, anywhere that we've put the most vibrant colors, we create volume. Volume, 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 volume. Big volumes here, there, right there. Maybe we'll bring in a little bit more over here. So now I'm just refining everything. Multiple coveragings of each this color over and over and over again. And right here. got to create some more volume right here. So I'm not sure which way I want to go with that. Let's do a little bit of both. So I'm doing the bluish green and the yellowish green because we have a transition here between bluish colors and the more vibrant yellowish colors. So we'll just kind of dot this in, at least on top where we know there'll be a little bit of a highlight, and then we'll just keep adding to it. I'm trying to leave a little bit of dark area around those veins. And then maybe we'll grab some of this tealish, bluish green, put it in there as well. So it's a little bit of both. Come back. Tops of those veins again. Something like that. Start doing the same thing kind of up here on the side of his arm, top part. It's funny, it's just starting to unfold. All right, so now we'll do one final airbrushing. I'm going to put about 5 or 6 drops of my thinning solution in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is the 1 part isopropyl, 9 parts distilled water mix. And then we'll do a little bit of our necrotite green, like a brush full. So I'm trying to make a sort of a glaze here, but it's not going to be too thick and it's not going to be too thin. And we'll put 1 drop of our Sunny Skin Tone. Kind of bump that color a little bit more. Probably need another. Sunny Skin Tone is very, very strong. All right, see how that looks. Spread into a rag. All right. All right, so we got our Hulk here. I'm going to be spraying at an angle, so about 45 degrees. And I don't want to get super close. I want to pull back a little bit. And so we're going to be spraying at about 45 degrees from above. I don't want to get too close. I don't want this too focused. I don't want something like that. I want something like further back and spraying out to a big area. So let's start on this shoulder over here. I'll go up about 10%. just doing a little bit. And a little bit on his chest here. His face. That shoulder. Just gonna knock it down a little bit. And here we're just tuning all the colors down just a little bit all the way around. All right, so we've got orange right here, and I want to bring some of that. I've got it right up in the chest area right there, a little bit in the legs in a couple spots, but I think to kind of balance this out, I need a little bit over here. So, that being said, let us get on that. So again, just start with a little bit. Go all the way up into the shadows over here. So what I'm doing is once my paint starts running out on my brush, I start moving around into other places and just doing lots and lots of brush strokes, different directions and stuff. And kind of creates a little bit of a blend there. So we've Got to do several layers of this. I did the first one that was mixed with a little bit of the Mournfang brown. And now bump up the amount, the opacity of it. Ooh. Starting to like that a little bit more. And there's a little part of the muscle up in there. I'm going to hit. Rat-a-tat-tat. Put a little bit in these knuckles over here, just because it's kind of, that shadow's kind of boring. Just dark, 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 dark all the way. Put some color back in there, that looks cool. Put some in these shadows over here. Just because they ain't got nothing. Add a little bit all over the place. So this is our kicker color. And basically it's, kicker colors are typically contrasting colors on the color wheel. And in this case, it's contrasting to our bluish greens. So that's at least how I'm justifying it. Also, it looks friggin' awesome on the model. So then we will add a little bit of highlight color to that. Whoa. By a little bit, I mean tons. What was I thinking? That little bit of light right there is in effect sort of backlighting. Not necessarily realistic, but coolistic. That's a good word. I have to copyright that. Here we go. Think we could go a little bit oranger, orangier down here. And if it looks like my texture is starting to look a bit wonky, I can bring the other texture back in. I don't know why I'm whispering. Maybe I get some little bit bigger texture on our scratches in a couple spots. Okay. Now, got a lot of vibrant colors. We need to do one last sort of glaze action. How are we going to do that? So let us take coal black. First we'll put about, so I switched, there's still green in here, but that's okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you notice I'm just using my isopropyl alcohol water mix. I'd used Scale 75 stuff before, and it seemed like it went on a little bit, I don't know if it was my paint, which granted these P3s are a little bit satin, but it just seemed like it went on a little bit too shiny for me. Although once it dried, maybe it's not so bad, so whatever. So I'm just going to use my regular mix this time, see if I get any different results. You know, you always want to pay attention and see what happens with your mixtures. So we'll do that. I'm going to put in some of this Mornfing brown, because that was my orangey brown. And sort of desaturate that blue just a little bit. And we're going to put a little bit of this Thamar black in there as well. And desaturate it a little bit more. That might be too much, so we'll put that over there. Alright, so that's a bluish brownish black. And there's our dark color. You know, I think I want it darker though. So more brown and more black. I'll put quite a bit more paint in. So 1, 2, 3 drops. Seems appropriate. Who knows? There's no way to really count this, so measure it, because you're using different paints, different everything. So now that's much darker. I like that. Let's take it on this model that we saw painting before and just see what happens. How quickly it shades. I think I like that. It's always good to have a tester model around just to see what happens. Hit some areas up by the neck. Maybe a little bit in the face there, a little bit in the hair. Now on this back, I'm going to cover a big swath, so hold the airbrush back further. It's like that far away. And look at it from a distance. Same with on these pins back here, just little bits. Desaturating my color just a wee little bit. Once around, look at everything. If we need a little bit more volume in areas, we can always just add it. So this is a weird area of the model, like on the front. That's the front facing right here. On the back, you kind of want people, I think, to look at it like this. So if that's the case, we need light wrapping around these areas right here, which I kind of had started, but sometimes you don't see this stuff till later on or when you're actually done. So we'll just fix that up. Put a little bit more down here as well. There's a little spot right there that I kind of, during the painting process, went back and forth with. But maybe we just bring up, it's got a shadow there. Maybe we just bring up a highlight just a little bit. Give them like, there's a little something going on there in that muscle group. All right. Rock and roll. All right, folks, that's it for this video on how to create volumes using saturated color. So what did we learn today? Number one, now, while we can create volumes with just light and dark, it's very hard. Number two, saturated color helps us create volumes easily. Number three, saturated color shows up in poorly lit rooms. Number four, the warmer the color, the brighter and closer the color appears. Number five, cooler colors have a tendency to appear further away and are darker. Number six, saturated colors are far more interesting than desaturated colors. Number seven, you can create a final shiny highlight by using a complementary color. Alrighty folks, that's it. We are done here. Stay tuned next time when we tackle the Hulk's pants and the face. And as always, if you're looking for more training, we have lots of private coaching spots available on the Patreon page. Thank you once again for supporting us here at Miniature Monthly. We couldn't do it without you. And until next